I mentioned before that it would be very tedious if you had to go to each meter and each account and modify their settings manually. So what I'm going to show you next is the way we've allowed bulk chargeback setup through brand new setup spreadsheets. Not only are they new, but they're actually a new format that we transitioned to for chargebacks in version 7 to make the setup process and the update process as easy as possible for all of you. So there's a new bill calculation setup spreadsheet and a new bill split setup spreadsheet. Every option that's available through the UI by logging in and all the things that I clicked, those same options are available with the setup spreadsheets. There's no longer a difference between the things you can do with setup spreadsheets and those things you can do in the UI. They're 100% match. The new format, as you'll see in just a minute, also allows additional flexibility by allowing multiple rows of data to be grouped together. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. It's easy now to replicate. You can take a section of your setup spreadsheet, and if you want to use those same settings over and over and over again, you can simply copy and paste and just change the meter or the account that needs to change without having to redo everything from scratch. The other nice thing about our update sheets are they provide a complete snapshot of your setup. So when you have configured something, whether you did it manually or you did it through a setup spreadsheet, when you download an update sheet, you're getting the full contents of your chargeback setup, and you can save that. So maybe you want to try making a change and say, oh, I didn't like that. Let me roll back to what I used to have. You can simply just upload it again and it will reset to that information. And you'll see how that works in just a minute. So in version 7, there are several different ways to get to the setup spreadsheets. One of the most common ways is by using the Create button and clicking here. And as I mentioned, you'll now see under the Update section 2 new setup spreadsheets. One for bill calculations and one for bill splits. Let's download the bill calculation one first. In this case, I don't wish to filter. I'd like to have everything that's in the database. So that's saved as an Excel file for me. For those of you who have ever used our bill importer to import a spreadsheet or a CSV file, you may be familiar with the idea that the way the importer works for EnergyCap is as long as we find the same account and the same start and end date to a bill on multiple lines, we'll group all that information together and save it as one bill. Our new chargeback setup spreadsheets use the same model. You can now have multiple lines that all apply to the same chargeback as long as there's no difference between what we find in the meter code and the account number fields. So you can repeat the same information in multiple lines, or you can even leave it blank. As long as we don't find a different value from what was above, everything until the next different value is considered part of the same chargeback. So what you'll see here as we look at our bill calculations is as we move from left to right, all the same steps that you configure through the UI. And we've collapsed them into sections so that you can ignore parts that may not apply. Now you recall when I downloaded this, I downloaded an update sheet. This is always an update sheet. You're always getting the information that you had in your database already. When you upload, you can either update things that are existing, or I could wipe all this out and just create something new, and it'll process only the new things that are applied. You'll see that as I expand here, you'll see what I mean. So I expanded this first section, and all of the gray area is part of telling EnergyCap what is the thing that I want to update. What is the meter? What is the account that you wish to update? And one of the things that we did is we allowed vendor code to be optional. So if that account number is unique within your system, which for many of you it is, you don't even need to provide the vendor ID. If we can't uniquely identify, we'll give you a warning and you'll need to add a vendor ID. As we move over into the purple section, what you'll see are the questions that we asked as you created a version. What is the start month of your chargeback? Pull this over. What's the start year? So when is this version effective? What's the name of the version? If you leave it blank, we'll put in the word original, just like we did on the UI. Is there a workflow step that this should be associated with? And you'll see a drop down here of all of the available workflow steps that match bill calculations. So you can either add a bill calculation to a workflow step or remove it from a workflow step all at one time. And what if you want to completely delete or remove the chargeback settings from this particular meter? Well, there's a column available here to delete this version from your database. When you process that, we'll see it, and we'll just remove those settings from your system. So there was a question earlier about what if I set up the wrong thing? You can actually come in here and mark this for delete, and when you upload this to EnergyCap, we'll remove the settings off of that meter. As we continue to move to the right, you'll see that the next section is all about how do you want us to calculate use. And if I expand it, you'll see all those same options that we saw in the application. You can pick a particular channel. So you can see all of the different channel types that are available. You can pick a channel to use. You can supply a fixed amount, in which case you need to provide the units, copy use from another meter, etc. All the same options we already talked about. You'll also notice that as you make selections, the other items that don't apply are automatically grayed out on that line to help you see what do you need to fill out and to make sure you don't have conflicting information, that you haven't configured use to be calculated in two different ways. Continuing over, the next section, you will tell EnergyCap how you want cost to be calculated. There's the space available for you to add meter lines or account lines. And that's where having multiple lines is really helpful, because as you can see here, both row 8 and row 9 are related to this one chargeback. If you recall, on our summary bill, we wanted to add a subtotal and then add a percentage for our county tax. Because the meter and the account did not change, both of those lines get grouped together as part of the chargeback setup. I could have many more lines that I want to add. That's fine. As long as we don't find a different value in meter or account, we'll assume every line after this applies to the last chargeback in the list. And as you can see, all the settings I configured through the application are now in this spreadsheet. So this is where I can save a copy, save it off if I need to, go work on it for a little bit, bring it back, upload it into EnergyCap. The same is true for the bill splits. Similar format. Since bill splits are configured from the account first, excuse me, here we go. The bill splits are listed here. You'll need to provide your account, same thing. Vendor is optional. If that account number is unique in your system, there's nothing that you need to do. You can skip over it. All the same settings for version information, and then you either configure a static split, a dynamic split, or an advanced split. All three options are available here, and as you can tell, with our splits in particular, having multiple lines to process is really helpful, because as we look at, let's say, our static split percentages, here we can see we have 3 lines that will all be processed as part of this split setup. And if I drill into the details, there are the percentages that will be applied. Any questions about the setup spreadsheets? Okay. One thing that you can easily do is use setup spreadsheets out of version 3 to get some of your chargeback data, and then put it into setup spreadsheets for version 7, and then upload it. As I mentioned before, as you're migrating to version 7, one of the nice features is that as you set things up in 7, it will not impact what you have set up in 3 or the install client. So you can continue to work on your workflows, and if you want, take some time to set things up in 7 without impacting what you're doing on a day-by-day basis in other versions of the application.